So, I chose online communication and education for my project. Now, to begin, word of warning, I am very sick, so I sound awful at the current moment, but I will do my best to explain everything that I wrote in this project. So, starting off, whoops. Future concerns. While the internet is very helpful, it can help a student or a person look something up, buy something, understand a topic they didn't understand before. It can also be very detrimental, especially when it comes to education. And while it can be helpful to education to engage students, it can also allow for things such as purchasing papers, plagiarism, and distractions in the classroom environment. Now, students may think these things may help their grade, but in fact, it can hurt them more. It can lead to serious consequences and not actually understanding the material that they are meant to be learning. Now, starting off, we have purchasing papers, which is otherwise known as contract cheating services. And according to Business Insider, as many as 1 in 6 students, or an estimated 31 million students, have engaged in buying papers online. It is nearly impossible to track the buying or purchasing of papers, especially when they're written by a second party or third party rather than a pre-written paper, because there is no software to detect whether or not a student bought a paper. Now, certain softwares like Turnitin have been attempting to update their software to try and detect these types of things, but it still cannot be proven if a student has used them or not without accusing a student who may or may not have cheated or not. Now, New Zealand, the USA, some states, and the UK are all attempting to fight to shut these services down and make them illegal. However, some of these services are legally running a business where a student can purchase a paper legally and sell it as their own. And many of these papers range from $13 to $20, maybe even $100 if it's a very long essay. But you also run the risk of possibly getting scammed, or on a website that I found, which detailed a safe way of buying papers, you can actually get ousted by the company from which you buy to your school if you give them your personal information such as your name or your school. Now, something that I found interesting when I was searching this up was that when you look up purchasing papers, rather than finding articles about like the issues of it or possible benefits, which aren't many, except for what students believe there are hundreds of different companies and websites that pop up for purchasing papers. Very little articles. You have to specifically write purchasing papers, articles, or negatives or benefits to actually find articles about it rather than just the websites of it. Now, something else interesting that I found while looking up purchasing papers, it is not only a student issue. There were investigations of teachers allegedly buying pre-made research papers in order to get promotions or funding. So students and teachers alike, college professors, are buying papers to get around doing the actual work, when in reality you could write the paper and learn about it, the topic, rather than buying the paper. And with the expansion of the internet and search engines, even if these types of services are banned or made illegal or under your institution are deemed cheating, it is still very easy to find a website, purchase a paper, and sell it as your own without anyone being able to detect whether or not it is actually your own paper. And that is one of the main issues that I personally cannot find a way of preventing at the current moment with education and the internet. Now, a second issue that relates to the internet and education would be plagiarism. Plagiarism has been something that has been happening in institutions and schools around the world for many of years, and has only gotten worse with the use of the internet. And many students know that plagiarism has serious consequences, such as failing the project or the class, suspension, or in serious circumstances, getting expelled. And you can get expelled from schools, high schools, middle schools, colleges, really anywhere if you attempt to use someone else's words as your own. Although there can be incidental uses of plagiarism, for example, writing a paper, citing someone, or writing someone's words and then completely forgetting to cite it afterwards, or paraphrasing and forgetting to cite them at the end of the paper, which is understandable. It's not particularly an excuse, but it is understandable if someone forgets to cite it, but it is still considered plagiarism. Now, most college presidents, 55%, say that plagiarism in student papers has increased over the past 10 years. Among those who have seen it increase, 89% have blamed computers and the internet as playing a major role, because students are able to go on the internet and find words of people on any website anywhere in the world, even obscure websites that such softwares as Turnitin may not pick up on, and cite them as their own words, even though they may not be. And many students do it because they want a good grade, or they have poor time management, or they simply think they won't get caught. And while there are certain detectors, such as Turnitin, that analyzes and detects if someone has plagiarized, it can't necessarily pick up on all instances of plagiarism, such as if a student took words from a very obscure website that Turnitin may not be able to detect, or programs like PowerPoint or images, things like that. And there is a new issue of a thing called patch writing. And patch writing is basically when a student takes bits and pieces, certain words from someone else's work, and integrates it in with their own words. And it can make it very difficult for softwares like Turnitin to detect whether or not those are the student's actual words or not, because it is a Frankenstein mix of someone else's words and theirs, making a sentence that is basically undetectable. And the third issue with the internet and education would be classroom distraction. Now, this is something we looked at earlier on in the year, where the use of Facebook or other internet entertainment could potentially alter a student's behavior or learning processes and could lead to a negative academic ripple effect. And while the internet can be very useful for making a more engaging and interactive environment for students to learn, it can also be a serious distraction if they are tempted to view other things or use apps or their phones in school. It is this illusion of multitasking, which is something we learned earlier, where a student believes that they can listen to a lecture or learn at the same time while scrolling through Facebook, watching a video, or something like that. They believe they can retain the information from both, which they cannot. And certain schools have set up Wi-Fi connections or firewalls to try and prevent the uses of certain apps or websites. However, with the use of VPNs, students can easily bypass those protections and making it impossible for schools to fully eliminate distractions in the school environment. So the uses of devices and the internet can be a distraction not only in school but out of school for academic learning. However, it is not the devices necessarily that are causing the issue, it's the temptations of looking up something else or simply not wanting to do the work or pay attention that are the real issue. And as the internet grows and more distractions appear, is there any real way to prevent the growing temptations or students using their devices in the incorrect way in a learning environment? And the conclusion is, well, schools and colleges are growing in different ways to prevent the negative effects of the internet on students' education. The internet is adapting and finding more and more ways around the attempts. As the internet is ever growing, there are new and more apps every single day that can help students learn or cheat in a school environment, such as new apps on your phone where you can take a picture of a math equation and instantly have the app solve the equation for you, which is technically cheating. And it will only continue to grow. The temptations, distractions, plagiarism, paper purchasing will continue to grow and spiral out of control until colleges and schools can't keep up with it, making the internet a serious problem when it comes to academic learning. Of course, there are still some ways that schools have found to prevent some of this, but for how long can they hold out against the ever-changing and growing internet? And here are my references. I did include the reference that explained how to safely purchase a paper online. I included it because I found it funny and I referenced it. I don't recommend following what it says, obviously. Thank you.